It was the summer of 1995, and I had just graduated from college in Tallahassee. My plan was to spend a few weeks on the road before starting a job I didn't want at a bank downtown. I had no real destination in mind, but Savannah, Georgia, had been mentioned by a friend, somewhere historic and eerie, with Spanish moss hanging like cobwebs from ancient trees and squares dotted with fountains and cannons that had witnessed war. It sounded like the kind of place where time sat still and stories never died. That appealed to me more than I wanted to admit. I arrived late on a sticky Thursday evening. The bus terminal on West Oglethorpe Avenue looked dated even for 1995, but there was a strange comfort in its worn seats and flickering vending machines. I hadn't booked anywhere to stay, just planned to find something cheap once I got there. The humidity clung to my skin as I stepped out, and the air smelled faintly of salt, old wood and gasoline. It was quiet, too quiet for a city that had just hit nightfall. I found a small flyer pinned to a board inside the terminal. Room for rent, historic district, weekly rates, quiet. It had a phone number and the address scribbled in blue pen. I called from a payphone, and someone answered. A woman's voice, raspy but formal, gave me an address on East Gaston Street and said I could come by any time. I was young, broke, and too naive to question why anyone would open their home to a stranger for that price. The house was a narrow Victorian townhouse, its bricks dark with age, and its iron railings choked by ivy. A faded plaque near the door read, "The Pulaski House, 1856. A single porch light glowed weakly through the hanging vines, and inside, the hallway smelled of lemons, dust, and something older beneath it, like paper rotting in a damp basement. I didn't see anyone else. The key was already in the lock of the second-floor room. There was a note tucked beneath it. 1 week, cash only. Do not move the mirror. I thought it was a joke. The room was sparse. A narrow bed, a dresser, and an old mirror in a carved wooden frame stood in the corner opposite the bed. The air was heavier upstairs, still warm despite the ceiling fan rattling overhead. I unpacked what little I had and collapsed onto the bed without even changing. Outside, cicadas screamed. Somewhere close by, a dog barked once and went silent. That night was the first time it happened. I woke to darkness. At first, I didn't realize I was awake. The room hadn't changed, but something felt different, denser, like the air had thickened into syrup. I tried to lift my arm, but it wouldn't move. Neither would my legs. My chest rose and fell, but each breath was shallow, as if something enormous sat on my lungs. I could move my eyes, just barely, and I scanned the room. The fan above creaked rhythmically, but I couldn't feel any breeze. The window was still shut, the curtains motionless. Then I noticed something new. A figure, standing in the far corner near the mirror. I tried to blink, to convince myself I was dreaming, but my body remained frozen. The figure was tall, indistinct in the gloom, but definitely there. Not the mirror itself, in front of it. It didn't move. It only stood, watching. Its shape was wrong. The shoulders were slightly slouched, the head tilted far too low, as though it were observing me with morbid curiosity. It didn't speak, didn't shift, but I felt its awareness of me, thick and heavy as the summer air. When I finally managed to move, whether minutes or hours later, the figure was gone. The mirror looked normal again, catching the room's shadows but showing nothing unusual. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning I tried to dismiss it. Heat exhaustion, a long trip, maybe some sort of waking dream. I walked the city to clear my head, past the moss-draped oaks of Forsyth Park, past old row houses and Confederate statues, through Lafayette Square and into antique shops that smelled like incense and old silver. But every time I stopped, every time I closed my eyes for even a second, the image came back. the figure, still and watching. The second night, I was too exhausted to stay awake. I thought I could beat it by leaving the light on, but it didn't matter. The paralysis returned, worse this time. My limbs were dead weight. I couldn't scream, couldn't twitch. My mouth felt glued shut. The air buzzed faintly, like radio static just outside of hearing. When I opened my eyes, the mirror had changed. Something moved inside it. Not a reflection, not something in the room. It was like the mirror had become a window to something else, somewhere darker, colder, impossibly deep. Shapes swirled inside it, almost human, but distorted. Their mouths hung too wide, as if screaming. Their arms were too long, or bent in unnatural ways. One of them pressed a hand against the glass from the inside. The figure in the room was back, standing just inches from the mirror now, as if it had stepped closer since the night before. It didn't look directly at me, but rather into the bed, through me. I felt its presence like static crawling across my scalp, whispering without words. My body wouldn't move. I wanted to look away, but my eyes stayed locked on the mirror. Behind the figure, more shadows twisted inside the glass. One shape suddenly jerked forward, its face smashing against the inside surface. The sound was muffled but sharp, a crack or thump that didn't belong. A hairline fracture traced down the center of the glass and then vanished. I passed out from exhaustion or fear, I don't know which, and woke up covered in sweat, my limbs aching from tension. I should have left, but I didn't. Something about the place had gripped me, and part of me, some irrational, desperate part, felt like I had to see it through. The third night changed everything. I lay in bed, fully dressed, refusing to let myself drift off. I'd wedged a chair under the doorknob, not even sure why. The lights were all on. But slowly, inevitably, sleep took me. I don't remember closing my eyes. When I came to, I wasn't in bed, at least not completely. My back still pressed against the mattress, but everything around me was wrong. The ceiling was taller, the walls were darker, slick. The fan had stopped. There was a new smell, like metal and ash. The mirror was gone, or rather, I was inside it. I could feel it. The bed beneath me wasn't mine. I was looking out at the room from behind glass, as though I'd been pulled into the other side. The perspective was strange and slightly warped, like looking through water. And in the center of the room, on my side of the mirror now, stood another version of me. Same clothes, same expression, but motionless. Its eyes were open but unfocused. It turned toward the bed, and I realized with terror that it was getting into it. It lay down exactly where I should have been. A perfect imitation, settling into my space, closing its eyes. And I was trapped behind the glass, a silent observer in my own room, watching something else take my place. Then came the others. From the corners of the mirror world, the distorted figures emerged, limbs dragging, mouths split wide open in silent screams. They moved toward me, but slowly, as if through syrup. Their eyes were hollow, dark voids that absorbed light. One of them reached out, its arm snaking toward me like smoke. As its hand touched my chest, I felt it, cold and electric, like plunging into ice water. My heart stuttered. I gasped. When I woke, it was still dark. The room was silent except for the fan. The lights were off. I hadn't turned them off. The mirror stood untouched. My own reflection blinked back at me. But I could still feel the cold where the thing had touched me. I left the house at dawn, abandoning my bag. I didn't even lock the door. I walked for hours until the sun was high and the air baked the streets. I sat on the fountain steps in Monterey Square, watching tourists laugh and pose for photos, wondering if I was still asleep, if any of this was real. I never called the number again. When I tried later from home, it was disconnected. I couldn't even find the listing for that address anymore. No Pulaski house on East Gaston. Just townhomes, none with any record of offering rooms in 1995. I still dream about that mirror. Sometimes I wake up unable to move, drenched in sweat, heart racing, eyes locked on the corner of the room. There's never anything there, not anymore. But I don't sleep near mirrors now, not ever. I cover them, or turn them to face the wall. And even still, in the quietest hours of night, I sometimes catch a glimpse, not of myself, but of the thing that almost became me.